Hi, and welcome to my second episode on functional React programming. In the previous episode, we've hooked up React and Redux, and today I want to look at how to change your values in your components. And after that, I want to create a little helper function which will help you do some assertion on your component, especially on your props. So let's dive in. This is the code of the last episode. And what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how we can change our header. So we're going to create a little input box, which when you edit the value in the input box will change your header. So last time we left this dispatch function alone, and now we're going to actually use it. So I like to think of it as data flowing through a tree. So all your components are like the branches of the tree, and I usually picture it as an upside down tree. And when you dispatch something, when you send a dispatch, you dispatch back to the roots of the tree, and then it will flow again. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function called change title, or a property which will contain a function or something like that, and it will get a new title. And that new title will trigger a dispatch. So we're going to dispatch a command, and the command is going to be going to have two things. It's going to have a type and a payload. Now you can have any type of command you want, but I usually like to use a type and a payload. In our reducer, we'll check the type and then do something with the payload. But you can put more properties on it. So the first thing is the type, and the type is simply going to be change title. And the payload is going to be our new title. And then inside of our reducer, we're going to say if command.type equals change title, we're going to say return state, and the title is going to be our command.payload. Okay. Triple equals. Okay. So this is it. This is basically what we need to get our store ready to work with these dispatch functions. And now we're going to create our input box. So const, let's call it input box. And it's going to take a few things, and we will need a title because that will be the initial value that the input box will have, and it will get the change a title function. So it's the same name as this because we map all of our dispatch functions to our props. And after that, we'll have this div, and inside of this div, we'll have an input. And the value will be the title, and on change we'll have a little function. It will be an event, and then we'll say change title and pass in the target.value. Okay, that's it. Very simple. And now we need to connect our input box the same way that we connected our header. So const connected input box equals connect my component and pass in the input box. Okay, and now let's render our connected input box. Okay, and as you can see, we can change this and our header changes. Nothing special, just like everybody's done a million times with React. But notice that we haven't used a curly brace yet except for defining our objects. So everything is still a stateless, side effect free component. How can we test if title and change title are passed into our component? So this is one of the things about React. People usually do it like this. So what they do is they use these curly braces and then they say if not title or not change title will return null. And I don't like this. For one, we're doing two things now. We're testing properties of our props, which we need to ensure that they are there. And then we return our component. So can we do better? I think we can. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by creating another function called assure. And basically it's an assert, but because of unit testing frameworks, they usually claim the term assert. So we're going to use assure. And assure is going to take a predicate and a component. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we return a function which will, when we call our predicate with our props, if this holds true, we'll have our component with our props on the thing, and else we're going to just return null. So this is basically the pattern that we're going to use and we're going to see throughout my tutorial series. You create a function which takes something, usually a component, which returns a function taking props and returning a component. What can we do with this assure? Well, the first thing we can do is we can assure that our input box has these things on it. So what we do is instead of passing in the input box, we'll pass in assure that, and now we have to create a predicate. So const predicate, which will take props and this must be an equal sign, and we'll say props.title and props.change title. And we will assure that our predicate holds true, and we'll pass in the input box as our value. And as you can see, we still have the same functionality. Now, one thing to note is that I wrote props here, and that might be confusing because usually when people see props, they think about a render function, something which will return a component, which is not the case here. So don't call this props, call it something else. Call it P, call it whatever you want. But props is a little bit confusing there. Now we have a way to assert our validity of something. Now what if you wanted to assert two things? Would you have to squish them together into one function? No, we can check if our predicate is an array of predicates. What I usually do is I create a second function because I don't like overloading my parameters. So what I do is I create a const assureMany, and that predicates a component. And now we're going to use a reduce on this list. So we're going to reduce our predicates. Predicates.reduce. And what are we going to reduce? We're going to have an accumulator and a predicate. And we're going to say if accumulator and don't forget that this has to take props. If our predicate props, and we're going to pass in an initial true. So if this holds true, question mark, then we'll just return our component, else we'll return null. And now we can split this up. So we can say predicate 1, we can say predicate 2, and for some reason my laptop has decided to take off. Okay, and now we have two predicates, and now we can say assureMany, and we can just say predicate 1, predicate 2. I like to, when I use multiple functions like this, I like to do some indentation. And now I can see what I'm actually trying to render. So now we have a connected and assured input box. And again, the only thing we've used are side effect free pure functions. So whatever you pass in there with the same props will always give you the same result. And that is exactly the way you want to create your application. This is easy to test, easy to maintain. This is just a very pure way of writing your code. So let's recap. In this episode, we've looked at how to update your values in the state and then reflow that through your application. And we've looked at two helper functions, assure and assureMany, to help you verify that the properties on your props are valid. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will put a link to this code in the description. And I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.